Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to our predictions and speculation. Today, we are talking about The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, or Chapter 19. We are going to give you everything we think might happen in the next episode of The Mandalorian. But before you do so, please hit that like button. We're trying to get this video to about 40 likes. So if you can help us out by hitting the like button, that would really help out. And then subscribe to our channel if you haven't. We do post this type of content every single week. We cover Mandalorian predictions every single Friday. So if you're interested in this content, make sure you're subscribing. We also cover Bad Batch predictions, and we have reviews out for the Bad Batch Season 2 and The Mandalorian Season 3 every single Wednesday. We're also covering Heir to the Empire in our latest episodes of Legends Book Club. That is coming out on Monday. So let's dive into The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3 predictions. At the end of last episode, we had multiple things go down. We had Bo-Katan, really, for all intents and purposes, join the crew, and that's kind of where we're going to start our discussion today. She seems to be a part of the adventure with both Din and Grogu and kind of along for the ride, as so to speak. But I think when we look at the way she acts throughout that entire episode, it seems like not just is she starting to come maybe more around to Din, or maybe has a little softer side for him than she tries to put up, but in general, she seems to have had her spirit kind of reignited for Mandalore and her passion about Mandalore. Now that she knows the planet's not poisoned, now that her suspicions that the planet isn't cursed are confirmed, I think we're going to see a lot more from Bo-Katan as a leader and as somebody who really one of the only Mandalorians we're aware of that's been around since the Clone Wars and part of all these different factions of the Mandalorians. So Nick, let's start the conversation there. Where do you think the journey and how do you think the journey will continue with Bo-Katan and Din, who is injured and knocked out at the end of the episode, and as well with Grogu? Also, their ship is still on at Bo-Katan's palace, so we have to go back there at some point.
Yeah, I think we do move off of Mandalore pretty quickly. I would say just from the marketing of like the poster where one side is Din and one side is Bo-Katan with the dark saber. She is now a shared protagonist. She is getting main billing for a reason, and I don't think it'd be useful for her after we've already seen her be so many times over and over again as a villain in the Clone Wars, a little bit more of an anti-hero, tragic figure in Rebels, her and then just kind of her role so far in the first season of the second season of the Mandalorian. I just do not see her just regressing. I think this is now the time for, like you said, action for her to evolve. Yes, like you said, Liam, she knew that Mandalore wasn't cursed. She does make like a point of reference of saying like, "Isn't it?" Just seeing the remains of Sundari and all that. But that's more of her like mental prison, her barrier there, and her belief of the planet. Now it's been challenged by this very fervent Mandalorian devotee and his like almost vivid like belief that this is like a pilgrimage that he's about to undertake. She does play it off as like I'm annoyed with you. She has been quite moved by Din, and without a doubt, even if she has been moping around, she did still come all this way because of Grogu. She's developed a dynamic with him and treats him like a Mandalorian foundling, if not even more so. And now I think we do land back on her castle, and I think we may possibly already returned to Navarro. I want to see her with her Death Watch kind of just jump into get fight, for her to recruit her people to be the sort of like law, the power, the Mandalorian influence in the region. I'm assuming Mandalore and that whole region is close enough to Navarro where she can bring her whole crew and then take down all the pirates and all that. I think this is a good way for her to build herself up. I don't know why exactly she would do that for Din and our High Magistrate in Grief Karga, but I think that would be almost immediately the next thing she'd want to do as like a testing ground for bringing together a Mandalorian army once more and possibly shape it underneath Din. I don't know. Maybe she now views herself as the second in command, the one who can give the wisdom, the knowledge, experience, and let the leader do the figurehead activities and have the real power, the king to the queen on a chessboard when it's necessary. And I think that'd be a pretty interesting dynamic.
That could be really interesting. I think, we are continuing the rest of the season with both of these characters. At least if maybe they're not in every episode together, but Bo-Katan is going to be in a good 6 out of 8, 7 out of 8. I could see her going off and doing her own thing, maybe off screen, and then coming back with the group of Mandalorians that she said left her because she's the dark saber. But I think the word is going to get out that she's going to want to spread it that Mandalore is not poisoned, and I think that's a big thing. If the dark saber is a symbol of unity in the post Mandalore days, really, it's more of a symbol of unity and more of a symbol of power than when the Mandalorians had Mandalore. If Mandalore still is habitable, even if the planet's turned to glass, even if everything's destroyed, the fact that the planet you can go on and you can breathe the air, I think that is probably the biggest symbol of the Mandalorians that you could possibly ask for. She's going to use that to perpetuate her rise back to power. I don't think we're done with the power struggle between her and Din. She is a very flawed character, and we like to remember her as a hero, but she's been mostly an anti hero every time we've seen her. The fact that she constantly is making mistakes, constantly stepping in the wrong place, I think that's going to play really strongly throughout this season and with her character. I do think the season ends with her eventually realizing that Din is the future, and maybe the future of the Mandalorians isn't steeped in the past. Maybe it is steeped in people like Din Djarin. Maybe the Creed, which you could tell there was something on her face that was really affecting her when he was saying the Creed as he was walking into the waters. She hasn't heard that in forever. And I think that's going to be kind of a major sticking point for her moving forward. Is I think Din's devotion and his obsession with the creed and with what it means to be a child of the watch is something that's off-putting to her, but also there's something about it that she can't help but admire and love because it reminds her of the past. And we do a lot of reminiscing with her in this episode, but also maybe reinvigorated some of those dormant senses of power, the craving for power that she thought she had kind of lost. As for Din and Grogu, I think it is going to be interesting for Navarro and like getting back to Navarro because we had R5 in this episode who accomplished the thing that Din needed IG-11 for. So is Din going to even try to fix IG-11? Was that just a passing plot point? I feel like that's not something you tease and then just get rid of. So I don't know if Navarro is next because chapter 4 is the one that Carl Weathers is directing. So I think we're going to wait till then to see. I think next episode really could just be about Bo Katan's search for former Mandalorians. I would love to see Din already go back to whichever planet the armorer and the rest of the children of the watch were on and get to see what it means that he's atoned for it. The atonement is something that the armorer tells him is no longer possible, right? Well, now that he's atoned for his sins, I think there's a much bigger thing at stake here than just the fact that he's atoned. It's the idea that Mandalore is now free from anybody's influence. It's up for grabs. Where Children of the Watch, Death Watch, they're all been stationed on other moons, other planets around Mandalore. Nobody's ever had control of Mandalore. And even if Mandalore is glass, there's something about being the ones to re-inhabit Mandalore. Could the Children of the Watch move there? Could they see that this is a sign that it's their cult, it's their group that are the ones to reshape Mandalore in the way that they want to, in the way of the old ways. And I think that actually ties us nicely into the second topic we should talk about, which is obviously the big reveal of the end of the episode, and that is the Mythosaur. That the Mythosaur, which was thought to be extinct, and there is still one alive, and it's living in the living waters of Mandalore. And according to the armorer, when she says that eons past have foretold the rise of the Mythosaur, and it will reshape the way we look at Mandalore and recreate a new Mandalore. We are seeing that right now. Bo Katan is the only one to have seen it, though, which is interesting. And I think that plays into more of that power struggle, that dynamic between Din and Bo Katan, because Din has not seen the Mythosaur. We could pick up right there as the episode begins. Maybe she is like I saw Mythosaur. It's like I got to go see that for myself. But how much of a disbelief is there between the two of them? All of that's going to be really interesting. But Cynic, where do you think the Mythosaur plot is going in the next episode? And how do you think it will be used across the season to further both the stories of Din and Bo Katan?
I didn't even realize that Din himself probably didn't see it because he probably was knocked out. In some ways, it's like she's now linked by some sort of destiny. This is the beast of their ancestors. And I think that conflict will possibly result in Din, becoming trained and skilled by Bo-Katan through his journey with Grogu. Maybe Grogu can give him some pointers, and he'll become better. I'd like to see Bo be a positive influence here on that sense. Maybe this is a way for her to be the one to ride the Mythosaur when the time comes, and that would cause significant frustrations, especially to the armorer who has been the one telling us about this prophecy, this legacy of what the future of the Mandalorians will be reshaped. I think ultimately maybe we do see what Queel said about how your ancestors rode the Mythosaurs and you're struggling with the blurg. Yeah, maybe eventually Din does write it. But in the short run of things, I could see her almost vouching for, okay, let Din lead the people, but let me be the stewardess, the consort of sorts of Mandalore. And if you've ever had any reason to believe me, now would be the case because now I've ridden the Mythosaur. It's appeared to me. None of you have had that opportunity. Clan Kreese should now still and can always should continue to rule Mandalore because of this mythological reconstruction that has occurred here. And I think that would be where a lot of conflict would come because an armor, while she would hate that explanation, she may also buy it just enough.
Yeah, that could be really interesting and compelling if you had Din as the symbol of the post world of Mandalore type of Mandalore with the dark saber, because we've all debated this just like we debated with the helmets before in season 1 when it was all about Mandalorians can't remove their helmets, and everybody's like, well, there's all these Mandalorians that remove their helmets, and we got that answered by Din and the Children of the Watch being considered a cult amongst the rest of Mandalorians. The mythology of the Darksaber doesn't seem to be a part of anything part of the Children of the Watch, so it has a lot more significance to Bo-Katan and the rest of the Mandalorians who seem to have at least been around on Mandalore specifically. So there's a lot of varying mythology across Mandalore, and we see so much in this episode Bo-Katan talk about uniting the Mandalorians, and that being the reason they lost Mandalore in general in the first place, not just to the Empire, but before, when there was a civil war going on between her sister and the Death Watch. And before that, even the idealistic civil war they had before that, all the way back to the constant civil warring and civil fighting, leading back up to when the Jedi finally defeated them, which is not a story we have detailed in canon outside of just the fact that that happened. There's going to be a conflict that I think even more amplified if she was the one to ride the Mythosaur, which seems to be the symbol for the Children of the Watch almost more so than her. But he has the dark saber, which is more of a symbol for her people. Maybe there could be a sense of unity if both of them were to unite. This show has been planning this for a long time because it is in literally the first episode. They've been setting up for him to ride it, but it would be cool if both of them had some type of symbol of power, or eventually maybe they switch. But you could look at the Mythosaur in two different ways, really. You could look at it as by it pulling Din into the water. You could look at it as maybe it's chosen Din by it actually making contact and like revealing itself through Din. But at the same time, you could also look at it as, well, it didn't kill Bo-Katan and it let Bo-Katan see it, showing that she might be a leader. I think that is supposed to be ambiguous when we end this episode. Whatever direction these characters are going in the next part of their quest, it's going to have to do with the emergence of the Mythosaur. But that's going to be it for our predictions and speculation for The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3. Make sure you're leaving your predictions and speculation in the comments, and also liking the video if you haven't, and subscribing to our channel if you're new to our channel. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we have so much stuff coming, including a review of Heir to the Empire, but also more predictions for The Bad Batch, and reviews every single week for the latest episodes of The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch. Our live streams and live Q&As for Jedi Fallen Order every single Friday. We always put in our community tab when we are going to start streaming, so make sure you're tuning into all of that stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.